Hello and welcome. Week 3. I'm Mark. This is
I'm
Jeff. And
Jeff, your history bros. We're here talking about who are we talking about today, Mark?
very cool guy. Well, maybe not so cool, depending on how you look at it. Very exciting guy, John Dillinger. A couple interesting things about John, real quick, before we jump into it. This being week 3, this was viewers' choice, so we kind of put this up to the viewers to vote against. It was John Dillinger, Public Enemy #1. We had
P.T.
Barnum.
Barnum.
Yep, Barnum and the Greatest Show, and then the other one was the Fall of Troy. So we kind of put that out there, and it wasn't a landslide, but it was pretty heavily on Dillinger. People want to hear about Dillinger, so
Well, he was such an interesting and really polarizing character.
yeah,
Absolutely. I get why, because this murderous public enemy #1. He's a fascinating historical character.
he is, and I've always been familiar with the name, and I knew he was kind of like Depression era gangster, but kind of digging into how he became who he became, and what he pulled off was I don't know. It was pretty fun to read up on it. So
Do people know why Dillinger today? What today is?
that's what I was getting to next. So today is John Dillinger's birthday. So June
Happy
22nd.
birthday to you.
Happy birthday.
Happy
He would
birthday
be
to you.
118 today, if he was still around, but he only made it to 31, which we'll get to in a second. But yeah, and that's kind of somewhat coincidence, but also kind of cool that it fell on this day. So let's get into it. So I know normally, Jeff, you and I kind of have kind of assignments and kind of look into certain pieces, but with it just being John, we just kind of dug in. So what's probably the coolest thing you came across with Dillinger?
He was such a juxtaposition. He tried to go straight a couple times, and I think that was kind of the fascinating thing. He was almost like, if there's a character that's doomed to go bad from the beginning,
Yes.
it's Johnny D.
Yeah.
He was raised in such a way that I don't think there was any potential that this guy was going to do anything but go bad.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've never studied sociology or criminology, but he's got to be like a textbook case of like a society created criminal. I mean, from the start, like this
Absolutely.
guy had it against him. So he had a rough childhood, kind of an abusive father. Father was also very, very religious.
Yeah, he became a deacon in the church. That's the irony right there. This guy was
Yeah.
a deacon.
And he not only is he kind of responsible because he was abusive, but also, I don't know if you came across the story of John's very first criminal offense. So, he was kind of petty thievery here and there, kind of had a reputation in the town for kind of being a bad guy or a bad boy. But his first actual charge, he and another guy robbed a local market. And the other guy, I think, got a plea deal or something, got a pretty light prison sentence, and John was still kind of in hiding and wasn't really coming out. And his dad talked him into, hey, turn yourself in, admit your guilt. And I think his dad had some kind of public stature because he knew the judge, or he knew
he really
something.
went to bat for him, which may be an indictment of what the judge thought of John Dillinger Sr., because he threw the book at him, and they didn't, correct me if I'm wrong, Mark, but he didn't even actually rob the market. He hit him with a handkerchief that had a rock or something in it. He knocks this guy down. This guy still gets away, but he goes and tells on these guys, and they throw the book at him.
Yep, it was unsuccessful, and he got 10 years. 10 years. They sentenced him for his first offense.
Well, didn't they give him 20, but he served like 9.5, 10 years. They let him off slightly early.
Yeah, something like that. But and he even said, all right, you guys, I'm gonna get out. When I'm out, it's over. I'm gonna be the meanest guy around. I'm gonna get educated on how to be a criminal. He told him straight up, he's like, you guys are creating me. And he was right. I mean, he did 10 years. He learned everything he needed to learn about being a criminal. And when he came out, he became a very successful criminal. And that's kind of interesting about Dillinger, is that, he lived to be the age of 31. And when you hear about Dillinger, I always thought like this was like a decade of the FBI trying to catch this guy. This guy had basically a year of action.
Yeah.
He did his 10 years. He got out in 1933. And he was dead by 1934. And so he hit the ground running. He forms a gang, gets out, starts robbing banks, and then J. Edgar Hoover puts this title of Public Enemy #1 on him, which is the first time the title's ever been thrown around. And I don't think we really see that anymore. Nowadays, it's basically America's Most Wanted or whatever. But
yeah, the litany today.
Yeah. And Hoover's another character in the story who's super ambitious. He's running the BOI, which is the Bureau of Investigation, which would later become the FBI.
Right.
He's trying to make a name for himself. So again, you have the combination of John doing like 10 years of prison, being educated as a criminal, then having a guy like J. Edgar Hoover that's looking for a hard criminal to make a reputation on.
That's exactly right. And I have that written down as kind of one of the two biggest impacts to me when I dig into Dillinger was the fact that the FBI sort of created itself out of this Dillinger thing. Since it crossed state lines, he robbed banks in multiple states across state lines. So there's no statewide or citywide authority that could take care of this. It had to be taken care of at the federal level. And this new BOI, the FBI is born out of this. It really kind of gives them a kind of a galvanization, I guess, and sort of a purpose to catch a kind of a newfangled interstate criminal like this. It really helped that ambitious, to your point, J. Edgar Hoover, a young J. Edgar Hoover at the time.
Yeah. Kind of a prick from what I'm learning, but
Hoover was
anyway.
An absolute a-hole.
Yeah. So he gets out of prison in 1933, which historically that's the height of the Depression. So there's not, one, he's a felon, and two, it's the Depression, so he doesn't really have a lot of job options, so puts together his gang and jumps right into robbing banks.
That's exactly right. Here's something, he served in the Navy before all this happened, didn't he?
He did, yeah. Less than a year, or maybe a year, and then he just went AWOL, and
I'm done with the Navy. I'm done with the Navy. I'm going to go out and I'm going to be a criminal now. Interesting guy.
And the Navy just kind of wrote it off. Maybe he wasn't that great in the Navy, because the Navy was just like, after like 7 or 8 months, we're like, yeah, whatever.
Probably
discharge.
Get rid of this guy.
Yeah,
he's probably better served not in the Navy.
Yeah. So in a year's time, 1933 to 1934, this is how busy he was. I found that he was responsible for like 24 different bank robberies, 12 that he did with his gang. So he's busy. And also it said he robbed 4 police stations. Like, I didn't dig into that. I don't know how you do that.
I dug into that a little bit because that one stuck out at me. He had the audacity, the unmitigated gall to go armed into a police station and rob these guys. And what they made out with, they're not in there trying to get, their pocket change. They're coming out with machine guns at the time, pistols, ammunition. These guys are arming themselves. They're ready for war effectively.
Yeah. And they were good at it.
Yes.
Yeah. So, and I dug into kind of the 12 main bank robberies that he's credited for with his gang, and started looking at the dollar amounts. And when you start reading, it's like, $3,000 here, $3,500 here. But I found this inflation calculator where you can like punch in the numbers and it tells you what that would be today. And so when you look at the 12 bank robberies that he's credited with, it's a total of like $328,000 in 1933. That's in 1934-ish. That's the actual dollar amount he got away with. And if you had taken that today, that's something like $6.8 million.
Exactly right.
In a year.
Right. But
it's crazy.
You know what though? Here's something else I found to kind of take that one step further. He came away with roughly $7 million in today's currency, which is amazing. The FBI actually racked up more money, spent more money trying to catch the guy than the guy actually robbed out of banks. They racked up roughly, he stole what, $500,000-$600,000, who knows? It took him, I see a tab that I've written down here that I found, $2 million to catch this guy. $350,000, $400,000, $2 million to catch the guy.
Which 2 million today would, crazy. And I think Dillinger kind of knew this too. He was a smart guy, and one, always played the card that society had created him, but also just that the more they chased him and the more they made a scapegoat of him, the more he was going to live up to that. I mean, dare I say, he had fun kind of doing what he was doing.
I was going to say the man had serious thrill issues.
Yeah. It says he was credited, but he was charged but never convicted of one murder, which seems to be a police officer was killed in a shootout.
It was,
So
yeah,
he never.
they were trying to get him out. They actually shot the sheriff, the local sheriff,
That's right, sheriff.
who
Yep.
died later on when he was re-caught, basically after he got out. He spent most of his entire adult life in prison. Let's not make a light of that. I mean, when did he go to prison? When he was 18 years old or 16 years old? I mean, or 18, I guess it was. He didn't get out until he was 9 or 10 years later. That's most of his life, and he's out on the run for another year and a half before he gets gunned down in Chicago.
Yeah, but I mean, but that's kind of a point with him, is like, even though they had these crazy shootouts, when he was in the bank doing his thing, he was a pretty cool, calm cat. He was not a violent guy. In fact, some people kind of compared him to Robin Hood, even though there's no evidence of him ever giving a penny to the poor. But he was known to not take money from the patrons. He would go in and he would rob the bank, and there's a couple stories where patrons are emptying their wallets because they think they're being robbed, and he would say, no, I'm here for the bank's money, I'm not here for your money. And I think that's kind of what gave him this reputation of Robin Hood. So
that's a great I have this point written down. This is my number 2 impact on Dillinger. He was the first celebrity criminal before they were chasing OJ in a white Bronco to LA. They're finding out this guy, and he's an absolute celebrity. He gets these, whether it's anecdotal or whether it's true that he actually did, because I know he didn't. From what I understand, and I saw one quote, and I'm kind of paraphrasing this, they said he was not going to spend money on poor people. He would much rather spend money on cars and cheap women. That was where he was. But he got this sort of Robin Hood thing because at the time, who did we as Americans all have real issues with? The banks. We all hated the banks. We felt they were responsible for this Great Depression that was wrought upon America. So for him to go in and rob banks, people were kind of going, "This is kind of cool. This guy from Indiana is out here busting into these banks and robbing them. We don't like the banks. We're totally cool with that." So that's how he kind of became this first celebrity criminal, this high-profile guy. Absolutely.
Yeah. He was a good-looking dude too. I don't know if you saw pictures, man. He was kind of a real dapper-looking guy.
They call that trademark grin that he had. Yeah. He always looked like he was a wise guy. He knew something. I mean, and he did. He was a pretty smart guy.
Yeah. A piece that I found interesting is, so part of his gang was Babyface Nelson, which I was not aware of. I was familiar with the name, and I just kind of attributed him to the same era, but they ran together.
Which I had no idea too until I started diving into this. I go, holy cow, Babyface Nelson was a real a-hole.
Yeah, they are two opposite type criminals, so it's surprising to see they ran together.
Murderous, just a absolute. He was hard as woodpecker lips. That guy was nasty.
Yeah, and he's accredited with killing more FBI agents than any other person ever, and I think he still holds that. Yeah,
no kidding.
Yeah, and I think Dillinger after a while wasn't a fan of running with him because he was so kind of spontaneous, and Dillinger was very organized and planned everything out and kept everything as nonviolent as possible. But then you'd have Nelson just shooting all willy-nilly and bringing even more heat on him. So I don't know how long they ran
guns and just bust in, didn't he?
Yeah, he would. Yeah,
Chicago typewriter, they called that thing. It laid down a lot of lead.
That's it. Good. So yeah, that's Dillinger. Happy birthday, John Dillinger. Interesting character.
Yeah, he was. I'm such a nerd that I actually one time did go in. I had to go watch a movie back. This is probably the late 80s, early 90s. I was young. And but I had to go to Chicago and watch a movie at the Biograph Theater where he was killed. Right outside the Biograph Theater. That's how big of a nerd I am. So here's your homework, folks. Be sure to look up Biograph Theater and kind of see what his end meant. How he was double crossed by a friend, basically.
Yeah.
Friend. So
set him up and kept talking him into going to the movies, and
exactly right.
They got him. And I think they shot him while he was running. So it's like a different era. Well, I won't get into it. Police shootings right now, but they basically, he just took off running and they just shot him down.
Yeah, like that's right. They trapped him in an alley, and if you've seen the Biograph, look it up on online. And there was an alley. He went down this alley, and I guess it was dead end. Yeah, they just gunned him down. Took several shots at him because he was trying to dig a 38 out of his pocket that he had,
Oh,
apparently.
is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah. Yep. I think that's the saying. He was wanted dead or dead. I think
That's right. So
said.
there you go. U.S.'s first real celebrity criminal. Just an interesting guy, a real juxtaposition to Mark's point. He tried to do it. He tried to be a good criminal, dare I say?
I guess a polite
criminal. I think that's probably better. That's too much of a juxtaposition. So what have we got? Anything else, Mark? Have we?
That's Dillinger. That's the Dillio on Dillinger. Like I said, he had a short career of a year, really, of really making a name for himself. So, not a whole lot more than just knowing he stole a crazy amount of money, and a very skilled bank robber. But that's him. So
a big impact on today. I mean, what an impact on literally today. We're still looking at this sort of sensationalization of these criminals and stuff like that. Next week, it sounds like we've got on the 28th of June. I don't know if anybody realizes that, but we're going to talk a little bit about World War I, about a really interesting story about the very start of World War I and the kind of the match that lit the powder keg that was Europe in 1914 to start World War I, the assassination of of Archduke Franz Ferdinand, and how just kind of an unlucky dead-end alley did it in and started World War I.
Crazy. I'm looking forward to it.
Post any questions, comments in our site. On Twitter, just let us know. We'd love to, or answer, put them on YouTube, and we'll be sure to get to them.
Cool. All right. Till next week, guys.
Adios. Thanks, everybody.
Ciao.